You may have heard me say that you need connection in order to sell online. And you do. You need people to like you in order to buy. If people don't like you, the chances of them buying are not very high. But the problem is that most people spend most of their time focusing on how to avoid getting hated on than they do on increasing the amount of people that like them or how deep the connection goes with their audience. Well, in today's episode, we're going to talk about, and I'm going to share some experiences we had in this last launch, all about how to get people to like you based off of who you are so you're not losing yourself in order to build an audience. So if you want to make more sales and build a deeper connection with your audience, then this episode has everything you need. So keep on listening.
Hi, I'm Brandon Lucero, and you're about to experience the new way to thrive in business, entrepreneurship, and life by leaning into who you are, what you love, and standing up for what you want to create. Get ready, because this is where we go against the grain, say no to outdated society norms, and we say yes to change in order to create a happier, more fulfilled world. Welcome to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Today, we're going to talk about something I experienced in our last launch, because I think it proves, or doesn't even prove, I don't need to prove anything, but it shows, it was the perfect example of something I always say. And one of the pillars, or I guess areas of content that we focus on within New Generation Mastery and the New Generation Mastery method is connection content. We have thought reversals, we have educational, what to do content, we have connection content. And what I always tell people is that people need to like you in order to buy from you. We all know that, right? We've all heard you need the know, the like, and the trust. But the problem is that a lot of people don't focus on content that specifically develops the know, the like, and the trust. Everyone just tells you just to go do it. No one really tells you the deep psychology in getting someone to know, like, and trust you. Well, today we're going to kind of talk about that. And we're going to talk about a couple different things. I believe to my core that if people don't like you, they will never buy from you, no matter how good your solution is. And we see people use companies out of principle, out of values, even though that company would be a huge convenience to them, even though that they would have a benefit in that. And, I see, like, I'll use Walmart as an example. A lot of people will not shop at Walmart, even if they will save money or have convenience, because Walmart's closer than, say, like a Target or something like that to them. They won't shop there because they don't align with the values of Walmart. They think that Walmart runs out mom and pop shops. They think, whatever they want to think. I don't know. And they won't shop there. So, and again, this isn't for me to debate whether or not you should shop at Walmart, so please don't take it that way. This is to prove the point that people won't buy from a company if they don't like that company. And before we go any further, let me just say one thing. This doesn't mean that you need to adjust who you are to be liked by people. Okay, so we're going to talk about that. In the personal brand business, in the course business, in the service-based business, in the program-based business, someone needs to like you in order to buy from you. But you also have to understand not everyone is going to like you. That's just part of life. Not everyone's going to like you. And I think a lot of people focus less on how do I get people to like me based on who I am, and they focus more on what do I do to avoid having people not like me. I'm going to say that one more time because it's really important. I think a lot of people, when it comes to messaging and it comes to content and just life in general, what they don't do is they don't look at what their content or messaging is and say, what do people like about me and how do I embrace more of that? Usually what people are saying is, what can I say or not say so that I don't get haters, so that I don't get people not liking me, or I can avoid this whole thing of people not liking me. And until you brace the fact that people are not going to like you and that's okay, you're always going to struggle with your messaging. You're always going to struggle with building a deep connection. You're always going to struggle with the know, like, and trust. And I don't know, I personally live my life by the quote, and I don't know who said it, But I would rather be disliked for who I am rather than loved for who I'm not. And that's what I do inside of my brand. If there's something that I like to do or something that I want to do or something that I feel passionate about, or there's a piece of me that I want to incorporate into the brand and you don't like it, that's fine. The door's over there. Don't let it hit you on the way out, or let it hit you on the way out. Do whatever you want to do. I don't care, but just don't be here. It's your choice to be here. I'm not going to adjust and bend who I am. I'm not going to adjust and bend my message. I'm not going to adjust and bend my values. I'm not going to adjust and bend to you because you have a problem with something. What I'm going to do is I'm going to lean in more heavily into who I am, what I believe, what my values are. And the reason why I want to do that is because I believe the more we do that, the deeper connection and the deeper amount of trust and the deeper amount of rapport we actually start to build with our audience. And it's the true even with our friends. Like, I'm sure you all have multiple friends. I'm sure you have multiple family members or different siblings. But the ones you connect with the most are the ones that you feel safest around. They are the ones that you can be yourself with. They are the ones that you have shared values and beliefs that are, and the more important the beliefs you hold, they also hold. And that forms a deeper connection. And what starts to happen is when you form deeper connections, the chances of those people actually buying from you starts to go up. And this is one of my biggest issues with educational content, is that it's focusing on information. It's not focusing on connection. However, if we are aware that connection needs to happen, we can start to incorporate that in our educational content. We can also do content design purely to create connection. And I'm very intentional with this. I'm very intentional inside of our brand. I'm very intentional with my content. I'm very intentional to release certain things. I'm also very intentional to hold my ground on certain things. So I hold my ground on and boundaries of what our message is, who controls the message, when I will change my message. And this is something we talk about inside of our program as well, is setting boundaries on certain parts of your program so that the external world stops controlling you. So get very clear on the boundary of your message of a company. Who's in charge of that? And it's okay if you want part of your team to be in charge of it, or if you want to be fully in charge of it, but understand who is and what the boundary is. And if you get very clear that there's a boundary inside of your company that you are the one who's in charge of the message, then why would you let some person on the internet cross your boundary and be the one who changes your message because you're afraid of getting called out or them not liking you? Okay. So we have to get people to like us in order for them to buy from us. Now, will it happen that someone will buy from you if they don't like you? Yeah, I'm sure that will happen from time to time, but the majority of the time they will not buy from you. And this actually happened on our last launch in 2 different occasions. And I try not to do it as much on the podcast just because I know that we do have some kids and children who listen to the podcast, but I try not to cuss on the podcast. Every once in a while I do. But on our trainings or calls with our students and stuff like that, and honestly, just in my normal everyday conversation, I will cuss from time to time. Like when I get really passionate about it, I think throwing in an F-bomb or this or that, it just adds more dynamic and it adds more emphasis on certain things. But that's just who I am. From time to time, I cuss. And I do it with our students sometimes. I do it with our coaches, conversations with our friends. That's just who I am. So in our training over the the 3-day live experience that we did, I cussed a few times, and not a lot. And I don't know, like 2 or 3 times over the course of like 10 hours of worth of training or something like that. So not a ton. And we got an email from someone who said, and I'm just going to paraphrase, said something along the lines of, love the training. I know this is my problem. You guys are really good at what you do, but you cussed multiple times, and they had some belief around cussing. I can't remember what it was. And I just wanted to wish you guys good luck, but I'm out, I'm opting out, I'm unsubscribing, whatever. And I don't share the story to say they're wrong or I'm right, because there is no wrong or right. They didn't want to be around someone that cusses. I get it. Like, That's totally fine. They had enough personal power to recognize that and to go find a different person who can teach them that's more aligned with their values. It's a beautiful thing when you look at it. I maintain my personal power. They maintain their personal power. They probably could have emailed or gone and done that without emailing, but they did. And I'm grateful that they did, because it gives a great story that I can share on the podcast with a great lesson. But the point is the reason why I'm bringing this up is that they said, you're good. You can help me. I have this problem, but they chose to leave because there was a misalignment of values. There was things that they didn't like about me. And even though I could solve a problem they had, they chose to leave. And so this just reiterates that if people don't like you, they won't buy from you. But what I didn't do is adjust who I was. I didn't go and apologize for something that I wasn't sorry for. I just moved forward being who I am, embracing my values, embracing authentically who I am. And we had an amazing launch because there were people that connect with that. And it was very interesting because when the whole cussing thing came up in the launch, I mentioned that to people, that I will cuss from time to time. And that's just who I am. And when I said that, we had a ton of people in the chat were like, yes, let's do it. I love that. You should do that. Blah, 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 blah. There was support of it. And the reason why I bring this up is because it's the perfect example of that. No matter what you do in your content, no matter what you do in your life, there's always going to be people that are going to like it. There's always going to be people that don't like it. And if you lean into those things that people like, the values, and I'm going to talk about different ways we can do that, you can actually build deeper connection with those people, which will lead to deeper rapport, connection, trust, all that stuff. So the big question is how do we start to lean into that? Where should we lean into to get, people to like us, to deepen the trust and all of that stuff? Number one, I have a couple of ways in which we can do it, is standing for and against very similar things. Okay. This is why I tell a lot of our students not to talk about politics inside of your brand unless you have a political brand, is because if you're teaching Instagram, for example, and then you start talking politics, even though someone thinks that you're really good and they really like you and they really like your training, but you have political differences, then they're going to leave, not because of your IP and in your trainings, but because of something that's not even relevant to your brand. This is also why I tell people to be very careful to follow and promote certain narratives that are popular in the moment, because narratives always change. And if you're constantly taking a stance on a narrative, you're constantly pushing out opinions or things to your audience that could cause them to leave. And if you keep doing it over and over and over again, even if people agree with the first 3 stances that you take, you're eventually going to find one that they don't agree with you on, and then they will eventually leave. So you have to be very careful of what you're incorporating into your brand. Like, I'm fine, or I think it's okay if you have some sort of stance on a topic that is really important to you, but pick one or 2, because if you do it over and over and over again, well, then you're eventually going to be pushing people away. So you just have to be very careful with it. So when I say that you stand for and against the same things, I'm not really talking about politics, and I'm not really talking about popular narratives that are unrelated to what you do inside of business. What I'm talking about are things inside of your space. So for example, for me, I take a stand against a lot of the traditional content philosophies that have been around for the last 10 years, because I believe they are not as effective as they used to be. And a lot of people continue to use them and suffer because of it. So I stand against that. I stand against a lot of society norms that are outdated. That's kind of what my brand stands for, is a little bit of disruption. Actually, those are the things I stand against. So some of the stuff I stand up for is I stand up for authenticity. I stand up for your personal power. I stand up for you shedding the external world. These are all things that I stand up for and I stand against. Now, if you stand for and against those same things, you're going to build a deeper connection with me. Another thing I stand up for is entrepreneurship, because I think entrepreneurs create the most amount of change on this planet. I stand up for that. And if you're an entrepreneur, you likely believe the same thing. I also stand against, from time to time, I will stand against the current education system because I think it needs to be adjusted to the way the world is going. I stand against that. Most entrepreneurs will generally kind of agree with it as well. So those are the things that I stand up for and I stand against. But if you have a similar belief in the things I stand up for and stand against, we're going to start to form a deeper connection. And if you don't, then you likely will leave my brand. That's just usually the way it works. Another way, and there's two of them, I'm going to lump two of them together. Another thing you can do inside of your content is acknowledge pain and acknowledge current situations and make your audience feel heard and let them know it's okay to experience the pain that they have. This creates what I call a safe environment inside of your brand. It makes people feel heard. It makes them know that what they're going through is okay. Your audience, and what humans do is we usually will individualize our own experiences. And when we go through life and we go through a pain, we tend to think we're the only one going through that pain at this moment. And inside of your content, if you can acknowledge, here's some of the pain and emotions that you're going through, and you're not alone. This is what most people are going through. And this is a part of the path. You're on the right path. You're going through the right experiences. It sends them a sense of relief. It gets them to like you a little bit more because you're acknowledging where they're at. But more importantly, you make them feel heard. And we saw this in our last launch. And it was really interesting because I've never heard this language before. Again, I'm always paying attention to the language people are using. I have heard things like this was mind-blowing and, whatever. I've heard that type of stuff before, but what I have never heard before is someone saying that they feel heard from my content. And which was really interesting because I wasn't speaking to any one individual inside of our content, inside of our training, but we heard from multiple people, like through comments or Zoom, like the Zoom chat, or people emailing in, or in the Facebook group, literally saying, this is the most heard I've ever felt from anyone's marketing. And I took a step back and I've never heard that before. Why are they saying that? Like, what am I doing? Because it wasn't intentional. What am I doing that's causing them to feel heard, to acknowledge them? And I started to realize what it was. And if you want to know what it is, you can opt into our next. I'm just kidding. That would have been total perfect setup for an opt-in, and I ruined it because I'm just going to give it to you guys. What I was doing was I was just getting very, very specific. I kept getting more specific and more specific on the pain points, the mistakes, but more importantly, the emotions they're feeling when they continue to feel the pain points and the problems. I was very specific on the emotions, and what I was doing was saying, it's okay to have these emotions. This is what everyone here is likely feeling and experiencing. This is what I felt. So now I'm becoming relatable. This is what I felt. Here's my story of when I had a webinar that failed, and here's what I went through. And I was making it relatable. I was acknowledging this is a part of the journey. It is okay to feel this. This is normal to feel this. You're not alone. But again, I had to get very specific on what those things were. So their subconscious mind said, that is literally me. And their subconscious mind would automatically say, that is me. So incorporating that type of language in your messaging and in your trainings is a great idea. It's a great thing to do. And I didn't realize I was even doing that until I started to see those responses. And so that is something that I would encourage you to start to do. I would also look at stories that you have told and can tell during your launches and things like that as well. Or even in your content or your podcast episodes or whatever, because in our launch, so I told this story of my very first webinar, or one of my very first webinars. And I'll tell the story for those of you that didn't hear it. It was the moment I thought my life was going to change forever. I had this idea and this goal that I just wanted to hit $10,000 in a month. And I think that's everyone's first goal when you get started is, if I could just make 10K a month. And so I had spent, 6 months to a year building up a YouTube channel, teaching video SEO, how to rank videos, things like that. It's probably about 6 months, and I built a decent following. I think I had a couple thousand subscribers on YouTube, and I had an email list of like a couple hundred people, maybe 1,000 people or something like that. And I did this webinar, and I had people opt in. I think I had a total of 80 opt-ins. So I didn't run any ads. This is all just my organic audience. I think I had about 80 people opt in for this training. And I was kind of doing the math. I'm like, okay, well, if like half of them will buy, this is again, how naive I was, thinking that I was going to have a 50% conversion rate. Well, half of them buy my product. I don't remember what it was. I think it's $400. So I had 40 people buy at $400. That's $16,000. I think I'm doing my math right. Yeah. Like that will be amazing. That's like life-changing money. And so I do my webinar. I was so nervous that I scripted the entire thing out. I mean, it was pages and pages and pages long. Even in the script, I literally had like in brackets, like hit the next slide. So I would basically, when the webinar was going on, I wasn't looking at the chat. I wasn't looking at anything. I was literally reading a script. That was what my screen was just a script. And then I had the cursor on the next button on PowerPoint or whatever it was. So I would read the document and then just hit the button every time it said next slide, next slide, next slide. I couldn't even see what the presentation was or what was up there. I was so nervous. And I remember my wife really wanted to start a family. And so she basically gave me a timeline, because I think I've been working on the business for 2 or 3 years now, not really making any money. And she said, I want to start a family, and I don't want to work, and I want to take some time off and spend with my kids, which means that you need to get this whole thing up and running. And so I was like, this is it. This webinar is it. And guys, I can't tell you how much time, energy, both mentally, emotionally, and physically put into this thing. I remember scripting this thing out. I went to visit my friends, and I would like take breaks when they were like swimming in the pool. And I would just get up there and like script out this whole webinar. I put so much time and effort into this thing. And I followed the perfect webinar script from a different online guru. And my wife, I told her, like, this is it. Like, this is going to be the day our life changes forever. Like, this is it. And she got up to go to work. She, gave me a hug and a kiss, and just said, good luck. Like, I believe in you. I know you can do it. And she goes to work, and I do the webinar. And I think I had about 40 people show up or something like that, do the webinar. End the webinar, and I go to check my PayPal account. And I was so scared to check my PayPal account, because I was like, this is it. Like, this is going to be the deciding factor. Did you hit your goal or not? Like, did your life change forever or not? And I wanted it to so badly. And I knew that if there were no sales in my inbox, that emotionally it was going to be tough. It was going to be rough. It was, in all ways, it just would have been really hard. So I go open up my email, and there's 0 sales, no sales, not a single sale. And I was heartbroken. Like I had this feeling in the pit of my stomach that didn't feel good. I felt almost weak in my body, and I was devastated. And then my phone rings, and it's my wife, and she's on her lunch break, and she calls me and goes, like, how'd it go? Did our life change forever? And I had to tell her, no, I didn't make any sales. And, she's always been great about being positive when I'm down. And it's like, don't worry about it. We'll get it figured out. I know you can do it. I believe in you. And I felt like I just wanted to cry. Like, even thinking about it now makes me want to cry. Like, I'm almost getting like teary-eyed and emotional thinking about it, because I remember how bad I wanted to make it. I remember how hard I tried. I remember doing everything right. I did everything everyone told me to do. I put out content. I built a following. I added value, so many tutorials. I did everything right. Email list. I followed the framework step by step, and it didn't work. And then a couple hours later, I get an email, and it's like, sale, $400. And I remember thinking, holy crap, we did it. Like, I made a sale. And I will never forget the thing that person told me, which was, I'm really excited to buy your program. I didn't even attend the webinar. I just knew as soon as you invited us to the webinar, I was going to buy because I love your YouTube channel. I like you. I like your sense of humor, and you're really knowledgeable about, in what you do. The point is they liked me. It was what they led with. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, I'm going to fix my YouTube channel. I'm going to get so many views. It was, I like you. I think you're really funny. And I know that you're really good at what you do. Like the skill set I had was almost the last thing that they were even focusing on. And just to kind of finish out the story, by the time cart closed, I ended up making like maybe $4,000 in sales, I don't even think it was that much, maybe like $2,000 or something like that. So I ended up getting more sales coming in. And that's something that you'll learn when you launch, is that the majority of your sales will happen like closing cart day. Usually it's the way it works out. But that taught me a really valuable lesson, which was that people have to like you in order to buy. So even back then I was kind of learning that lesson. But here's the reason why I told this story. That was the story that I told during our launch. And I think it was on day 2 or 3. We literally had people posting in the group and emailing us about the story, telling me that story made me feel heard. I thought I was all alone in these emotions, in these feelings, in these pain points. I thought something was wrong with me. I thought something was wrong with me because I see people all around me being successful. I'm not able to do it. I thought there was something wrong with me, and I feel heard and I feel seen. And that was because of my content. It was because of what I was saying. I became relatable to them from sharing stories and personal experiences of me. And honestly, what it was me being vulnerable, intentionally being vulnerable about a story that I knew would build connection. I was authentic. I didn't leave anything out. I just told the story again. I was as raw and as real as I can remember being. I didn't leave out or sugarcoat any of the emotions. That's just literally how I remembered that experience. But in doing so, you make your audience feel seen, and you make them feel heard. And this is something that's going to happen in normal conversations. One of the biggest reasons that people don't have connections, and even in their relationships with their spouses and partners, is because they can't make the other person feel heard. They want to project their opinion, their perspective, instead of actually listening and understanding the perspective of the other person. Again, that's one of the biggest things I had to learn this year with my wife and I, is we had to work on our communication. And I had to understand that she didn't want me to always solve her problems. But as an entrepreneur, I'm always trying to figure out how to solve problems. She just wanted to be heard. She wanted me to listen without projecting or interjecting with my perspective, my solution, she just wants to be held and heard. And it's the same thing with your audience. People want to be heard. They want to be accepted for who they are and what their experiences are. And you can craft content that does that. So the next thing also is to compliment people and have their backs. When your audience knows you're going to fight for them against something, against these industry norms, against certain things, and you're doing it for them, that helps build a deeper connection to you. Complimenting them. When someone tries something, compliment that. Like in a podcast episode, you can say something like, look, if you've tried something 4 times, it means you are the unheard entrepreneur, but it also means you have a ton of courage and tenacity. So one of the biggest things our students are dealing with right now, and probably some of you listening to the podcast, is they think that when we talk about mistakes, we talk about pain points, we talk about problems, that it's attacking someone. It's not attacking someone. You're currently describing a situation, but you can always back it up with compliments when someone's going through that, and it completely diffuses any feeling of an attack. And not only does it not feel like an attack, it actually builds more rapport with them because they will feel good about the amazing values that they see in their life. And I do this when I coach people. When people are having a problem putting out content, or they've had 5 webinars that have failed, my biggest thing is like, look, I don't see a failure. I see someone that's absolutely courageous. You know what that does is it makes them feel better. It's also honest and it's truthful, because that is how I see them. But it also helps build more rapport. They know I have their back. They know this is a safe space. They understand that I see them in a positive light. This all gets people to like you more. And then when we get down to the final ones, these are all things you heard me talk about the podcast already or on the podcast before, if you've been a listener for a while, values, identities, and beliefs. This is why we incorporate this into our brain. This is why we're so heavy on this inside the New Generation Mastery Program and the method, is that those things will create subconscious rapport, connection, and trust. When you have someone who you share values with, who you share identities with, and you share beliefs with, that automatically builds connection. That's why when you have a best friend, you don't have to logically or consciously think about whether or not you like them. You feel it automatically. It's because of shared identities, beliefs, and values. And the deeper those beliefs, the deeper those values, the deeper those identities, the deeper the connection you're going to have with them. Now, in order to do this, you have to remember who you are. And I believe, to my core, the more you remember who you are, the deeper the connection you get to have with your audience. Again, this is another reason why we focus so heavily inside of our program on remembering who you are. That's why we have meditations, we have exercises to get you to remember who you are. Because the deeper connection, or the more you remember who you are, the deeper the connection you will have with your audience. So to give you guys an example, if I was controlled by the external world, if I let my parents control who I thought I was, and they tell me, Brandon, you're going to be a doctor. You're a doctor. You're a doctor. I heard that my whole life, and I go become a doctor. And I want to put out content for other doctors. But in the back of my mind, I know I want to be a baseball player and I want to teach baseball, but I've been told I'm a doctor, and I start putting out content about a doctor. It's not really who I am. I'm not going to be vulnerable. I'm not going to be emotional about it. My passion's not going to be there. My excitement is not going to be there. I'm not going to be willing to be vulnerable, not willing to be authentic. Therefore, my connection with my audience isn't going to be as strong. However, if I adjusted and moved into baseball and started teaching baseball online and putting content out there, and I was lit up by it every single day, I was passionate about it, I genuinely wanted to connect with more people that I could help, I understood their problems and was willing to talk about their problems and be vulnerable with them, I'm going to build a deeper connection. But that happened because I started to remember who I was. When we remember who we are, we're more in alignment with who we are. We're more in alignment with our purpose. We're more willing to go to the depths than in something we're not passionate about. That's always going to be the case. So we have to start to remember who we are. The other thing is we want to be nice and have open hearts. And one of the practices that I've tried to do, and I'm not perfect at it, because I am human just like everyone else, but one of the things that I try to do is I just try to be nice to people. I can be a hard ass sometimes. I can be blunt when people need it, especially inside of our program. I'm not going to let people weasel their way out of things, but at the same time, I'm doing it with a loving heart. I am giving tough love, but at the end of the day, I'm always trying to be nice. And if I mess up, I apologize. Always. I always do it. I can't think of a time where I messed up and didn't apologize in the last 5 to 10 years of my life. But the point is it's very difficult to be mean to people that are constantly nice to you. And this is something I tell my kids all the time, is that it is incredibly difficult for someone to be mean to someone who is constantly nice to them. So if you have a hater or you have someone leaving stuff on your newsfeed, sometimes a delete and block is all you need. But other times, if they're constantly coming back over and over and over again, and you're just constantly being nice to them, you're not giving them what they want. So what you want to do is be nice, because what they don't want, they're not trying to be mean to try to get niceness back from you. They're trying to be mean for other reasons. And when you don't give them those other reasons, they'll eventually go away. Again, it's very difficult to be mean to really nice people. Okay. So those are the ways you guys can start to build more connection. Those are the ways you can get people to start to like you more inside of your content, because at the end of the day, people won't buy unless they like you. And if you can really focus on getting them to like you and build a deeper connection in combination with things like thought reversals and educational content, you'll start to see big shifts inside of your brand and your messaging and your marketing. Now, just as a reminder, before we wrap up this episode, some of the things that you don't want to do is you don't want to change or bend who you are in order to be liked. That is an example of not remembering who you are. That's part of the problem, is that we've bent and we've changed who we are our entire life, sometimes not even realizing it, to be accepted by people, to be accepted by parents and friends and society and our colleagues and people inside of our niche. But you need to protect your authenticity. If you can't protect your authenticity, then the connection that you have inside of your brand is going to suffer. So again, protect your authenticity. Instead of bending to be liked, you should be protecting your authenticity. And I wouldn't really worry about people if they like you or don't. I forget who said it, but there's a quote that I remember. It says, you shouldn't worry if people don't like you. Most people don't even like themselves. And if you can love yourself, protect your authenticity, incorporate that into the brand, those will be the people that you attract into your brand, and you can have this beautiful connection with them. This is something that most people will never get to experience because they're too controlled by the external world. They get into fear about being liked. And I get it. Some of the ways that I've been able to snap myself out of fear is to just get away from the computer, get away from the phone. Sometimes in launches, I have to do it because we get bombarded with haters all the time. When you spend as much money on ads as we do, you just get feels like every troll on the internet seeing your ads and commenting on it. And sometimes it's very easy to think that this world, your business, this online space is everything. And then for me, I go for a hike. I go out on the walk. I go to the woods. I go out to the trails and I'm walking around and I'm watching all the other people hiking. I'm like, they literally have no idea that I have an ad running. They literally have no idea who I am. This whole world that I thought was my world for the last hours is a small grain of sand in a sea of sand. That did not go as well as I planned it, but it's a small grain of sand in a whole beach. And you start to realize how insignificant this little launch or this little ad or that little comment really is, because none of it exists. When you go out into nature, you go out and you zoom out, or you're like walking through the woods, you start to realize that none of that stuff actually really matters. It doesn't exist on that walk. It doesn't exist out in nature. And so for me, I'm able to pull myself out of it because I go in and I just realize it doesn't work. The other reason why I think people get into fear and worry and they want to be liked is because when they're not liked, it sends them into a flight or fight stage. And I think people need to start regulating their nervous system. I think people need to start learning how to do that. There's a ton of experts, and actually we have a ton of students in our program who do teach that. And there's a ton of people you guys can follow to learn how to do this. But one of the easiest ways to do this is just to pull yourself out of that situation, your mind, and just focus on breathing, deep, slow breaths. And what I like to do is I do that and I don't think about anything. And then when I'm done with that, I just ask myself, what's the worst case scenario? If they said that one thing and I delete the comment, what's the worst case scenario? What's like the worst thing that's going to happen? Nothing. Literally nothing. Delete the comment and move on. And the last thing that I've realized over the years is that everything will pass. And I think we get so caught up in the moment sometimes that we literally think this one thing that we're experiencing right now is going to be around forever. And it's not. Unless you did something like majorly wrong. And most of you probably didn't. In fact, most of you probably didn't do anything wrong. You're probably just promoting your stuff. It will pass. Think about it. How many times have we seen something in the news and the media be really popular and people get so worked up about it, and then 2 weeks later, no one's talking about it anymore? And then you spent 2 weeks getting worked up over something that's going to be out of people's minds in a couple of weeks. Like right now, as I record this podcast, everyone's talking about the Will Smith and the Chris Rock slap thing at the Oscars. And I'm willing to bet by the time, like, it's huge. Like everyone's posting about it. Like everyone wants to give their opinion on it. Everyone's talking about who was right, who was wrong, blah, blah, blah. Like all this nonsense. Everyone's just talking about all this nonsense about this stupid slap thing. And what they don't realize is that no one's going to care in like 2 or 3 weeks. So you're getting so worked up and you're letting your energy get consumed by this thing that's not going to be relevant in like 3 weeks. And I'm willing to bet by the time we're listening to this podcast episode, which I'm assuming is going to be released in like 2 to 4 weeks, maybe even a little bit longer, that whole thing's not even relevant anymore. It's not even in the news. It's not even in the media. No one's talking about it. I could be wrong, but I do know that things get really popular. It's like a freaking tornado that sucks you in. You get so consumed by it. You're filled with fear and you're riddled with all this stuff. And in 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 6 months, whenever it is, it won't be relevant anymore. And you just wasted all of this energy being focused on something that isn't going to be relevant. And that's why I always focus on my message being a timeless message. No matter what's going on in the world, I'm very focused. I'm very grounded in what I'm here to do, what the change is going to be. And I'm not easily bent, especially today compared to who I used to be, not easily bent by a lot of these external things. And that includes haters. And that includes what other people think of me. I like me. I like who I am. I am proud of who I am. I am proud of the company I've built. I'm proud of who works for me. I'm proud of who I'm friends with. I'm proud of my program. I'm proud of the impact that I'm making on the world. I love me. And I'm not going to sacrifice that love for myself to make sure this random person on the freaking internet likes me. And the thing you have to realize about haters is that they will leave their comment, they will move on with their day, and if you don't reply to them, they will never think about you again. And if you continue to let them control you and control your message, it will hurt the connection you have with your audience. But you're also letting someone who's not even think about you live rent-free in your head for a long period of time. So those are some of the things that have helped me get past this. Is you have to realize that everything will pass and you have to be very mindful. So if a hater is leaving something, you bombard with haters, it will pass. It will stop at some point. And it's your choice if you want to keep feeding it and letting your energy get consumed in there. Stopping the flight or flight response is great. Breathing, regulating your nervous system, changing and bending, to be liked is a no-no. We want to protect that authenticity. And like I said in the beginning of the call, most people focus on what do I do so that I don't get people not liking me versus what can I do to enhance how people like me or enhance how people already like me. So again, it's better to focus on what can I do or what can I release or what can I embrace about myself to get more people to like me or connect based off those things versus what can I do or avoid so I don't get people not liking me. Focus more on getting people to like you than trying to avoid people not liking you. That small shift can change everything inside of your brand. But again, people need to like you in order to buy. The more that likeness or that connection you have, the deeper that goes, the more likely they are to buy. Okay. So if you like this episode, let me know and leave us a review on iTunes, or you can share this episode on Instagram and tag us. I'd be grateful for that. And yeah, that's it for this one, guys. So thank you for listening. I really like this episode. Hopefully you guys did as well. And I hope it changes your life in a positive way. So take care and I'll talk to you guys soon. Peace out.
Hey guys, thank you so much for checking out another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, go below, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you click on that bell icon and get notified every time we drop a new episode. Now, if you're looking for the show notes, we have them linked underneath this video, as well as our social media handles and some links to free training and offers that we drop from time to time to help you guys even further. So go check those out if you're interested, and thank you so much for tuning in to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.